Beyond 3D.
Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D. Matt and Clint here. Hopefully you guys have had a great weekend. We look forward to presenting this program to you tonight. So Clint, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Matt. And yourself?
Yeah, very good.
Great.
Very good indeed.
What have you been up to since I saw you last week?
Oh my lord. Ducking and dodging all the rain and the puddles on the street and all the different things streaming up from all the cars driving by a little too quickly. Now, quite frankly, it's been a pretty quiet week insofar as what's going on in and around the peninsula where we are, but worldwide it's been very, very busy.
China at the moment is flooded. Parts of China, absolutely flooded. Mm-hmm. Dr. Richard Allen Miller posted something today showing along the lines of mass evacuation of one particular city.
Okay. So it's going around the world. And the other thing being that we're getting there this weekend with this, I'll tell you what, guys, if you're in Taiwan, God bless you, because there is a massive typhoon heading that way, and they're calling it the perfect storm. So all around the area, we're getting some very interesting weather patterns.
Things are changing.
There's been a whole lot of changes. I also talked to a friend of mine last night who I haven't talked to in a while, and she basically stated that the reason this stuff is happening right now is because a lot of people who do a lot of spiritual work have been doing a really good job, and so now the other side has decided we have to try to take back control, let's say it that way.
So you saying those people, if those people weren't doing the good spiritual work they were doing, that things would actually be worse?
I think so, yes, quite frankly, and there's still a lot of nasty things going on out there, but weather-wise, we're all suffering a little bit right now.
Thank you, HARP.
Yeah, I'm about to say you have to mention at least HARP and weather modification software, hardware, etc., because quite frankly, what we're seeing here in the southern half of this Earth, aka the southern hemisphere, has been really odd.
China, like I said before with China, 128 dead, scores missing, 1.34 million evacuated, and 41,000 houses destroyed as biblical floods hit China. The Yangtze River burst.
Wow.
Yeah. Good
Lord. That is indeed amazing.
Look.
Okay.
That's pretty hardcore.
Yes, that's indeed.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller posted that today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, guys, there's a whole lot going on as far as the weather is concerned and earth changes. So, not climate change, earth change. A little bit different there. A little bit different as far as I'm concerned anyway. But that's one of the things that's been going on this week. Naturally, the political wheels keep spinning. Our election here in Australia was interesting. I believe there is a trend going around the world when it comes to things like that. People are actually taking their power back and stating to the politicians, you've stopped listening to us, so we're going to stop voting for you.
I love all the did you see the donkey votes? The images of all the donkey votes? Vote 1 Jon Snow. Somebody I think that was a classic. I'm not all up for donkey voting, but I don't mind having a laugh every now and then.
Every now and then, but quite frankly, they used to do the same thing in the United States. People would, the joke was you'd always write in Mickey Mouse if you couldn't decide who you were going to choose for president of the United States.
Well, that's a waste of time.
Well, really, that's just the way it goes. But what's going on worldwide with elections, with politics right now? The citizenry are sick and tired of what's going on, and the politicians are doing nothing about it, so they're going to force their hand. So in my opinion, that's a good thing. You need something like that every once in a while. And now is that while.
State Department confirms FBI got it wrong. None of Hillary Clinton's emails were classified at the time.
Oh, come on.
I know. Hillary Clinton insisted all along that none of the emails she sent or received on her private email server during her tenure as Secretary of State was marked classified at the time. That was contradicted by the director of the FBI when he claimed that a very small number of her emails were in fact classified at the time. The New York Times then determined that the number was just 2.
Interesting.
And now the State Department has confirmed that the 2 emails in question were actually classified at the time and had merely been marked incorrectly during the course of the investigation. So Hillary's all off scot-free once again to come forward and rule the United States of America.
8 years.
Now, didn't Bill Clinton have a secret rendezvous meeting on a tarmac recently?
He did. He had a meeting, what's her name, Loretta Lynch, who was the Attorney General of the United States. But the reason that meeting happened, according to those close to the Clinton camp, is because they are old friends, and Bill Clinton was actually a mentor of hers.
Yeah.
So they were getting together to talk about the weather.
Yeah. You don't think favors weren't called in?
No,
of course
absolutely not. You can't call in favors on stuff like that.
Good on you, Madam President, to be.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Heck, even certain conservative radio shows that have been touting Donald Trump lately in the United States have been talking about nothing other than the fact that the fix is in. And, oh well, nothing they can do about it.
You know who she reminds me of? Hilary.
Who?
Judge Dredd. What's his famous line?
I am the law.
I am the law.
That's it.
This is Judge Dredd. I am the law.
Well, quite frankly, she's above it. So are those who are in her circle. And if you cross them, you can end up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time to talk about her. We're not even close to talking about her yet.
How many more months now? It is now, at least 3 months, and then it'll really kick in. We'll see what happens in the next 3 months over there. They will come up with more scandal, more skullduggery will be afoot. All kinds of things will happen. We still have conventions to go through over there, both in Cleveland for the Republicans and in Philadelphia for the Democrats. So it is going to be an interesting summer. And the Olympics are coming around as well. So everybody can go down to Rio and catch Vika viruses.
I'll give you a clue who's not competing this year.
Go ahead, give me the clue.
Roses are red.
Violets are blue.
No. Roses are red.
Yes.
Violets are glorious.
Okay.
Don't sneak up.
On Oscar Pistorius. Yeah. But they only gave him 6 years.
Yeah.
Well, that means there's going to be another appeal.
6 years for that guy who has no legs in prison will seem like an eternity.
It will, but if it weren't for the fact that he was a so-called celebrity or an athlete or something like that, he more than likely would have been given the whole 15. And from what I understand, Reva Steenkamp's parents said that if he didn't get at least 8 years, they would appeal.
Okay.
So they'll give him 8 years in a month.
Watch this space.
Yeah, so that's going on as well. I didn't want to have to bring it up, but I will. There have been a few more incidents in the United States around guns and shooting. I think what is going on, there was one in Louisiana and one in Minnesota, and these were both caught on people's cell phones, and so there will be some major investigations going on. But suffice it to say this, the left side of politics, the Democratic side of politics, wants gun control. They know the Second Amendment allows a person the right to bear arms and to form a militia. I see your finger going up. Go ahead.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
when they had the Civil War,
Yeah.
that's it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was that not when the Second Amendment was coming in? When
Before.
people had muskets?
Before.
So it came in before people had muskets?
The Second Amendment came in at the beginning of the Gatling guns and those kinds of things.
Okay, so you'd actually have to take your time to load a weapon.
You know what I'll do? I will look up when the Second Amendment came through what kind of guns were available at the time.
I'm pretty sure it was those old-fashioned muskets where you got to pack the powder, pack the pellets, and you got to put the wadding in.
Yeah.
Pull the trigger.
Okay.
Gives plenty of time for your target to run.
But that's not the point. The point of the matter is it's time.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm
Those were
saying
the
is
that was the fastest gun of the time.
that was the fastest gun at the time. So that sort of you cannot compare apples with oranges. So if we're talking about an old-fashioned musket that you got to stop, take the time, take your time to prepare it so you can pull the trigger. That kind of law sort of worked with that kind of weapon. But this day and age, that kind of law wouldn't really work with an AK-47 because you haven't got time to run faster than the bullets that are flying at you.
Yeah, but it's not a matter of the weapon in and of itself. It is a matter of the fact that you have a right to defend yourself against both a predator and against a government that is predatory.
And the government that we're talking about is very predatory because
Yes.
the ultimate aim for them is to totally dismantle the entire country so that they can then have the upper hand if they
Yeah.
ever want to step in and take control over the population.
And if a population is armed, they have that much harder of a time. And so what is going to happen is they'll start by looking at assault weapons, and then they will say they don't want magazines over a certain amount of bullets. And then what they will do is, it'll be like they do with cigarettes down here. To buy a thing of bullets, it's going to cost you an absolute arm, a leg, and a foot. And that way they will control the marketplace. And that way when the takeover does come, they won't have to worry about being shot by people that are, in some kind of a duck blind out in the woods somewhere trying to defend their property. And it really comes down to that. It is a right. It's not a privilege. It is a right in the United States to carry an arm. And you have these people that were, in this case, shot by law enforcement. Both had carry permits, from what I understand. And therefore, what you have is a bunch of very itchy trigger fingers on some police officers that decide to shoot first and ask questions later.
Like this. Freeze. Beyond.
Three.
D.
That's it.
Yep.
It's a shame. So what they're doing is they're building to critical mass where they'll be able to say, look, we're going to get rid of this. Now, if Hillary Clinton does become president of the United States, I can guarantee you, I'll cut it out. I can guarantee you.
I so wished I had got my grey sports almanac and gone back a couple of years ago and put some money down.
I'll tell you what. Well, anyway, what will happen is this. They will have some form of control mechanisms put in place. There are control mechanisms now, but more than likely they will really clamp down on people, and it'll be a shame in a sense. But look, they're taking a lot of rights away. I mean, most people look at the Second Amendment. You better start looking at the First, because that's what they're doing with censorship on the internet. That's what Facebook is doing right now. That's what Twitter is doing right now. That's what a lot of these social networks are doing. They're getting together with government, and they are now basically looking for people that are seditious. They are looking for people whose speech they believe to be politically incorrect, and they are actually barring them and banning them from social media. And so the First Amendment is big time at stake as well.
You spoke about that last week, that if you didn't give your Facebook password when you tried to enter America, they might
That is the newest thing that's going on.
reduce your visa time.
Yes, absolutely. Or just basically say, nope, we don't want you here, goodbye.
But that's a really hardcore form of control.
Well, this is what's wanted, quite frankly. They're also talking about, this is the really interesting bit with all of this, it's social networking to the max. What they're also talking about, this was just voted down in Switzerland. The Swiss voted on a welfare system. They had a referendum going through about a welfare system. And under this welfare system, each and every Swiss citizen would receive, I believe it was 31,000 Swiss francs per year as a welfare payment. Everyone. They were going to go cashless, and this would be put on one of these credit kind of or debit kind of cards, and everyone would receive that every single year. The thing about that is, all of a sudden you get rid of the currencies, you get rid of all those kind of things, and you have a total control mechanism over your population. Because all you then have to do is, if they say anything that is seditious, if they in any way, shape, or form go against government norms, that card gets turned off. No gas, no water, no electricity, can't travel, can't do anything. And there is the ultimate control mechanism. So while people will look at a situation like that and go, wow, the government's going to hand me 31 grand, I'll take it. What are you giving up? The Swiss voted it down.
The Swiss have pretty much got it right.
They do.
They're the benchmark for the rest of the world at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, with everything from education to the way they look after their citizens, gun control, social welfare.
But what about gun control in Switzerland?
There is none.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody's got them.
Yeah, that's right. But do we see the kind of deaths that are reflected like around the world with people, with populations that have lots of guns?
Well, then you have to say to yourself, they all have guns and you don't see that, so what else do they have? And you just mentioned a few things. Therefore, if you have the proper medical care, if you have the proper education, if people are taken care of, all of a sudden, yes, you have guns to protect yourself, and people actually use them for that reason.
But you're also talking about a society that has a different level of mental health and a different level of physical and spiritual health as well.
Why is that? Because if we get into that, you're getting into Richard Allen Miller territory.
Yeah,
you're getting into food, and you're getting into...
I know.
A lot of things along those lines.
Look,
but it's true.
If you're looked after and you're happy and everything's ticking along nicely, you're not inclined to crack it if you have a bad day at work and go postal on somebody.
Yes, exactly. But you know that you are taken care of. You know that if you pay a certain amount of tax per dollar, and you can see, even here in Australia, you can see the fact that, yes, there's a lot of taxes charged here, but there are programs for families, there are programs for children. The government does, in its own way, try to take care of the population. They don't just take all of that money, put it into a sovereign fund, get rich themselves, and spend money on defense and go around the world, even though they have spent all that money on those daggone submarines that none of us will ever see.
No, we won't.
When will they be built? 2070 something or something like that? It's some weird... I was like, what are you doing? And they're French.
And what kind of war are you preparing for then?
You won't need them. They're French as well. Oh well. But that's been this week. It's been a weird week. A lot of things going on. I have a few things we can go into as well. So we'll get into that coming up after this.
Beyond.
3.
D. Welcome back this week to another edition of Beyond 3D, Matt.
Yes, indeed.
July the 16th.
July the 16th.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's coming up.
Rogue One trailer hits the 3-minute Rogue One trailer. Not the little snippet one.
Okay, now I'm told, you can verify this for me or not, and I don't think it's a big spoiler. Most people probably know this already. They're talking that... Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm looking forward to that trailer. That'll be very good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that immensely. Now, have you seen...
No.
You haven't seen Independence Day?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Had to.
I haven't had a chance. I've been knee deep. There's just been so much information has come both of our ways this week. I've just been swamped.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, we'll have to get to the movies and see a few things, I think. But along that line, actually, that we're talking about movies, I have a little snippet here. I was doing my video searches, and I ran into Tyler over at Secure Team, and he put up an interesting video this week.
Now, you were about to tell me this before we went on air, and I said,
Yes.
shut. I said, don't.
Yes.
Don't tell me. Tell me on air. Go.
So, what was going on was a tweet.
From who to who?
The tweet was sent by, you'll know the last name. The first name is nondescript until you hear the last name, Vivian Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick's daughter.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The question, or the topic, the premise, fake moon landings. And she's finally chimed in on whether or not she believed her father worked with the United States government to fake the Apollo 11 and on missions that went to the moon.
Now, it's interesting you brought this up, because I'll play a little bit of it for you in a second, but let's talk about it first. A really, really cool interview who we talk about every now and then. She was on this week, and she had interviewed a career colleague, fellow pilot and childhood friend of Neil Armstrong. He visited Neil right after he returned from the moon landing, and Neil said to him... Oh, actually, I'm not even going to tell you. Let's just play it.
Fair enough.
Beyond
3.
D.
I have not talked with Buzz Aldrin, but when I was executive producer or working as on the Sightings film in L.A., we interviewed half a dozen of the different astronauts, from Gordon Cooper to others. We heard about all kinds of things that they saw.
I had an opportunity to interview Buzz Aldrin for just a little bit, and he was talking about how he used a big pen to get off the surface of the moon because he had to push it down on the switch. He couldn't fit his glove down there. But I also was on with him with Larry King years ago on the Larry King Show, and he really never talked about UFOs. Has he changed his tune?
Yeah, just in the last year. And that's what Ken Johnson meant about he was glad to see Buzz Aldrin coming out of the closet. There is so much that I have heard. I think for me personally, the most dramatic discussion that I ever had about Apollo 11 was with a jet pilot who had grown up with Neil Armstrong when they were teenagers to their early 20s, and they both had become pilots. And I was supervising producer on the pilot for the Sighting series, working in Los Angeles for about 5 months. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to interview as many astronauts as we could. And at the top of my list as the producer was Neil Armstrong.
Even though he hated being interviewed, didn't
Well, and why does he hate being interviewed? This is where the story comes in. So it was recommended that I get in touch with this man who had been a colleague of Neil's for so long, and people have bonds from high school and 20s that can last for a lifetime. And so I was able to get a dinner meeting with this pilot, and this is what he told me. He said that after Apollo 11 crew got back, after the July 69 first step on the moon, eventually he made contact with Neil Armstrong, and that he could tell in Neil's voice that something was off. And he ended up going over to the house. And here, you would think in 69, after July, that Neil Armstrong would be joyous, that he would have photographs of all the stuff they did on the moon.
Oh my God, it's exciting.
The landing, and that it would be a big deal, right?
And life-changing, and epiphany, everything.
You would think. And the pilot said that in the house there was not one photograph. Not one photograph.
I find
Neil
that weird.
Armstrong involved with anything having to do with the Apollo 11. And he said, Neil, what is wrong? And Neil said, the voice dropped, and like they're really buddies. And he said, we were coming down, and there were these 3 big silver discs, and they were waiting for us and watching us. And the way the pilot told me is that Neil Armstrong was angry. The implication was, no matter what they had been debriefed, whether or not NASA knew or expected that there would be anything like that, the very fact that it occurred and our government had knowledge. Our government has had knowledge about an alien presence on this planet since at least World War II. This is 1969. These guys are being trained to go into space. They're being trained to go around the moon, and in this case, to land on the moon. And if somebody didn't sit down and really talk to them about the complex nature, as William Mills Tompkins and others are increasingly whistleblowing about, the complexity of multiple intelligences involved in this solar system, with this Earth, with our history, with genetic evolution, the whole 9 yards, then seeing 3 big silver discs on the crater edge would perhaps have been a shock to their system, even if momentarily. And I think that comment that Ken Johnson made about a psychiatrist who was debriefing each one of the crews for days, for weeks when they came back, and raising the question, were they programmed in some way to forget? And if so, would that help explain that Neil Armstrong was conditioned not to talk, but on top of all of that, that he perhaps felt a certain kind of disconnect and maybe even anger over the fact that here we were pretending NASA as a public agency that was supposed to be encouraging students and teachers and everything, but that in fact that it was schizophrenic with one face to the public, but a huge part that was allied with the CIA and the NSA, having to deal with an alien presence on Earth, on the moon, and throughout the solar system and beyond, and that would really get to you if you were training to go into space and then have 3 big silver discs waiting for you on the moon. And that apparently is the main reason, according to the pilot, that Neil Armstrong stayed silent for the rest of his life.
Okay, the question I would ask about all of it is this. Let's say it were me and I went through this. I trained, I'm ready, put my life on the line, riding fire, so to speak, get into orbit, separate, go down in a LEM, land on the moon. Step off, turn around, and staring you in the face, so to speak, are how many ships?
3, as she said.
And you just go, well, the first thing that would strike me after the shock of it all, I would be angry beyond description, because I would then know that the government that I swore an oath to protect and the country that I swore an oath to protect lied to me, in a sense, about what was actually going on out here. It's a heck of a lot more than we could have possibly imagined. You know they would know.
Now,
Yeah.
in regards to Kubrick, I would say, I'd go as far as saying that it's quite possible that when they had to cut that news feed because of what was there,
Yes?
that's probably when he took over.
Okay.
That's my.
That would be your opinion. I would probably say the same thing, because most of the people on the internet and have been going over this fake moon stuff. I'll go on record first of all before I continue here. As far as I am concerned, the United States and the Apollo missions landed on the moon. I am not even going to dispute or argue the point. As far as I am concerned, that is where I am coming from. To all of the people who say the moon landings were faked, I'm going to say get a life. As far as I'm concerned, I think you're nuts.
Well,
But that's my opinion.
Hang on a second. The people that say or believe that it was all fake, there could be a little bit element of truth to it based on what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Here's where I'll go with that.
Go.
We landed on the moon.
Yes, we did.
They found out that there were people up there watching them that said, "What the hell are you doing here? Leave," for lack of a better term.
Let's say, when you say people, let's say anything that's not Earth based. Yes.
And they said, you're not allowed here, leave. Just like they did in Kubrick's movie 2001.
Yes.
So therefore, being that is the case, they came back and certain parts of it were filmed on a soundstage
Yes.
to cover up what was actually found.
Yes.
Therefore, both things happened. But here's the thing, it wasn't even both. We landed on the moon. The other thing was a movie, and they used it as propaganda to stop the people of the planet Earth from finding out what was actually going on there. Now, back to Vivian Kubrick. I won't read the entire tweet, but what I will do, I'll paraphrase. And basically what she said was, think of the movies that her dad made. Think of the topics that he explored in those movies.
Oh, I can't wait to chime in on this.
And when you see the way he did things and the things he tried to expose, she basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, why would he assist the U.S. government in any way, shape, or form? No way. That is a grotesque lie.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yes.
1999. I think that was his last movie that he
Yes.
made.
Mm-hmm.
That was his homage to the Illuminati.
Yep.
Dr. Strangelove,
Yes.
or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, 1964. That was his homage to the atomic age. What else off the top of my head? Oh, forget The Shining. 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of films he did make were kind of exposing what was really going on in the world.
So now all of a sudden he's supposed to get in bed with the people he was trying to expose to fake a moon landing to the entire planet.
We're not privy to what was organised, so we can only make assumptions based on what information that we have.
Well, based upon this tweet, what I would say is, yes. Did they film some things on sound stages? Yes. Was he involved in it? Not necessarily.
No.
And that's the way I would look at it. But I thought it was very interesting that this is the first time she has actually come out and chimed in on this discussion and her attitude toward it. And she said not just the fact that it's her father, she knew the man. He would not acquiesce or do anything like that based upon the things he had been through and the kind of topics that he was bringing up in movies.
Do you even remember when Kubrick's name was attached to the moon landing?
Not that long ago, from what I can remember, because I can go back to the 80s and the 90s, and it was never really attached to it at all.
I think I heard it for the first time maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm quite frankly, never really came up before. Nothing along those lines. The fact of the matter is, if you're talking about NASA and you're talking about anything to do with the U.S. government, as far as we're concerned, I think we both agree on this, they're at least 50 years ahead of what we know without even trying very hard. It wouldn't be that hard to fake or to come up with a scenario where you can go onto a soundstage and film something and just use a backdrop, and that would cover up what was actually going on the moon. Who knows?
Well, there's more of that interview with who interviewed a woman whose job it was to paint out the negatives of the photographs that were taken on the moon landing of ships, crafts, structures, and in a special room at NASA, one person had the job of just painting out all the details on the negatives.
That doesn't surprise me in the least, but that's why I would say today to guys, look, the telescopes that are out there today and the things that you can get, technology, take a scope, point it at the moon. I'm telling you, the things you will see will amaze you. Beyond 3 D. This week, I was looking at the news and a new old topic has come up again, and it was about the Iraq War and what was going on with weapons of mass destruction.
Is this with the Chilcot report?
More than likely, yes.
Okay.
What is going on is now Tony Blair is in a lot of trouble. George Bush doesn't know what's going on. He's incoherent these days, so it doesn't matter what he thinks.
I think he was incoherent when he was president.
Yeah, which is why Cheney was doing it. And the other one who's been in the news because of it is John Howard. And saw him on the news report, and he stated, and I'll paraphrase again, but it's basically what he was saying. Yes, there were no weapons of mass destructions in Iraq. It was bad intelligence. But in spite of that bad intelligence, and in my opinion, in spite of the lies, I did the right thing invading Iraq with my allies, is what he basically said. Amazing.
The Iraqi war was all about the Bushes acquiring another oil field for themselves.
I also heard something else, and I'm
allegedly. I'll say allegedly, but if you don't have to dig very far to find that information.
When you said that, something else came up for me. There was some kind of technology in Iraq that was in one of the museums.
There was also technology in a cave.
Yeah. And they said a lot of that was cover because they knew what was there, and if they could get their hands on it, it would give them an edge, and therefore it would be worth going and invading Iraq just to get this thing.
I think it was a Stargate from memory.
That's starting to make sense again. I know I've heard about that before, and I think that was one of the reasons. And once they got the technology, it didn't matter, but they got in and got it out, and I think that had a lot to do with what was going on in Iraq as well.
Straight off to DARPA.
Oh, well, okay, go for it. That's the way. The thing about it is levels of truth once again. So one level of truth, you have this war with weapons of mass destructions, a made-up story. So you have a premise in order to go into it and invade a country. You say it's because of, you look and see what happened in the first Bush's era. He didn't finish the job. Second Bush comes in. He finishes the job, but there is another agenda, the secret agenda, the hidden agenda that no one knows about. Technology.
Wait till Hillary's finished her tenure as Madam President.
Yep.
After her second tenure.
Yeah.
Then we'll watch and wait and see if Jeb Bush gets it right.
There's another younger one that's water commissioner now in Texas somewhere.
I'm calling it now. I'm calling Jeb Bush the next president of the United States after Hillary.
He's got the money. Let's see what happens. It all depends on what Hillary does. There might not be a United States by the end of her term. You never know what can happen with that one in the White House. So we'll see what happens. But that was another news story this week. The fact that Tony Blair is now going to be raked over the coals. John Howard is being questioned about the reasons and the premises they used to invade, and now it's all coming out. Basically, what we're going through is the Earth is flushing out all of this negativity and trying to bring all of that negativity into the light of truth, and people are just going to say, we knew it.
Purging itself of its toxins?
Basically. I think so. And it's just a shame, but most of these guys, and even when you were caught and they're caught lying about it, or they say it was a fallacy, the whole thing, they still say they were justified. And I don't know how you can possibly say something along those lines.
They don't have to answer to us anymore.
Yeah, basically, which is why with Brexit, I'll guarantee. I got right now. I'll give you 50. I'll give you 2 to 1 that the damn thing doesn't go through.
Well, hasn't Farage just wiped his hands now and walked away?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I'll bet you. Good money. I'll give you 3 to 1.
Hey, I'm still waiting to cash in on my Hillary bet.
I hear you. But that's the whole thing. We've seen it many times. If you want to find out what democracy is all about, ask the Greek people who voted to leave the EU, and they brought in a new prime minister, and he said, well, we don't care what you voted, we're going to stay in anyway. And they assigned more debt. Check with the French, who decided to do the same thing, and then they got rid of it. A lot of countries have done this. So what's happening is people are finding out that one man, one vote might not actually mean anything anymore. And it just happened here as well with the last election. They couldn't really choose, and we got some really whack people in the Senate again. So there you go.
Yeah, democracy isn't really democratic, is it, anymore?
Well, the way some people describe democracy in the United States is it means mob rule. And the other way they describe it is 2 wolves and a sheep sitting down to vote on what's for dinner.
Oh, I love that. That's
a good
awesome.
one, right? And that's democracy. That's what it comes down to. So let's see what happens next. Watch this space.
Beyond.
3. Anyway, welcome back to Beyond 3D, guys. A couple of more things we want to go over for you this week. Jupiter, the Juno probe is in orbit. They did their 18-second burn, and it went into synchronous orbit in the way they wanted it to, and now they are going to be able to study what's going on around the big gas giant. That's very interesting. I think what's more interesting is the Hubble photographs of the aurora taken at what we would consider to be the North Pole, so to speak, of Jupiter, and the fact that it
looks like a giant electrical storm.
It looks like a giant electrical storm, but it also looks like there's a UFO or something circling around at a very slow rate that's the same color as this electrical storm. So it's very interesting, the different photographs and images that are coming back from that system. But 60 to 62 moons in and around Jupiter.
Don't ask me to name them.
No, we're not gonna. It's a system in and of itself. They'll get some interesting information coming back from this probe. Hopefully, we'll learn actually what's going on, and they won't hide a lot of it.
If anybody wants to follow that on Twitter, it's at NASA. Actually, I'll spell it. It's at NASAJUNO. NASA Juno on Twitter.
And they'll fill you in as best they can. I'm looking to see the first picture. I'm really looking forward to seeing the first pictures that come through. It'll be an interesting sight, being that as a person with a couple of telescopes, I used to constantly get up as a kid and I used to look through that to see if I could see Saturn and Jupiter and all the large planets. It was an absolute treat and a thrill when you could look through your own scope and see what was up there in the heavens. So it's really great that this kind of stuff is going on. So science has its place. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to certain things and other things, you know how I feel about it, so I'm not going to go into that.
Oh, you're not the only person.
But along with
I was going to say the rest of us mushrooms all feel the same.
That's what it comes down to. The other thing that's great going on out in space was a video I listened to this week. And guys, every once in a while...
Now, hang on, Matt.
Yeah,
hang on.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to derail you.
No,
I'm going to take you off the chain.
Gotcha.
It's really... It was like... You know, when you're so close to something, you can't make it out. Mm-hmm. And then when you finally get to pull back, you see all the pieces.
Yeah.
That's kind of what David Icke did for many, many people this week.
I think so.
Go for it. Off the chain.
Oh, I'll tell you what, yeah. I was watching this, it's 54 minutes long, guys, but it's 54 minutes well spent. And it's David Icke in one of his conferences, and what he is doing is going over Saturn and the system. Saturn insofar as how it is used in mythology. Saturn, the planet up in our solar system. He just did a really lovely job of describing the mythology behind it, the symbolism behind it, and how it is being used today. And I'm listening to it and I'm going, yes, that's very interesting. Some of the things I had actually seen, the symbols I had actually seen and heard before. Then he got to a point where he went into what he believed Saturn really was and what it was doing.
All of his information, though, has been confirmed by many different other scientists as factual.
Yeah.
All David Icke did was put it all on the table and made all the pieces fit together.
Literally fit together for me. And so I really want people to watch this video because I want them to have that moment where you go, whoa. And the only other time I had that moment in recent memory, it's a long time ago actually, where I went, whoa, like that was I hate to bring it up, it was a Star Trek episode. Let me finish, I'll say what it is.
I'm not going to say a word.
And the episode was called Darmok. And it was an episode where this race and Picard the leader of this one race and Picard go down to a planet. They can't understand each other. The universal translator doesn't work. They have no point of reference. And it's the episode basically, they're fighting this beast on the planet, but the episode basically goes over how they have to learn to find a way to communicate information. And as I'm watching the episode, Picard all of a sudden figures out that this race, that this captain is speaking using his world's metaphors. And when he said metaphor, I'm watching the episode and for me it all clicked. I was going through everything this character was going through, and when he figured it out I was like, oh, it was there in front of you the whole time. When David Icke said what he said about Saturn's rings and how they were being used, I went, that's the truth.
Not just that. I mean, we'll definitely put the link to that on our Facebook page tonight. Highly encourage everybody to check that out.
Absolutely.
If you're not linked to our Facebook page, you want to look us up and join in on what it is that we're posting and talking about. Beyond 3 hyphen and the letter D is the easiest way to punch it in, and we'll definitely send you as much information as we can. But that interview that we just played earlier with Linda Moulton Howe and the ET presence allegedly on the moon kind of collaborates with what David Icke put forward in regards to the moon being an amplifier for what's being pumped out of Saturn.
Exactly. It's fascinating, guys, and when you just sit back and you listen, you take it in, and all of a sudden you can just see the brain start to tick, and you can just see the way you look. All of a sudden you get the vision of Saturn in your head. You get the vision of the moon in your head. You can see those rings, and then all of a sudden you look at them on one level, they start to pulsate and they're sending a signal out, and it all makes sense.
And if you look, I'm just going to say, if you're not too keen to look it up or you're not that interested, all I'm going to say is the word matrix.
Yes.
And Elon Musk
the
other week came forward and said we're definitely, almost certainly living in a matrix-style holographic universe. Now, when Elon Musk comes out and says something like that, when Linda Moulton Howe comes out and talks about an alien presence on the moon, and when David Icke talks about Saturn pumping out the matrix and being amplified by the moon to us,
pumping out that signal.
All these people can't be wrong.
No.
These people don't spend time together, but yet they're all saying almost the same thing.
Yeah. The research is coming together and people are putting the pieces together. It's fascinating. And now, guys, we're lucky because, let me think now. I was living closer in Melbourne in a suburb called Clifton Hill at the time. David Icke came down to Australia. And that was a long time ago. Now, my daughter, this would have been at least 2001 or 2002 or something along those lines. Maybe 2002, 2003. But I digress. David Icke is coming to Australia.
He's coming to Melbourne,
And he'll be in Melbourne.
and he's doing a 12-hour seminar.
Exactly.
12 hours of David Icke.
That's it.
Obviously, with a break, tickets are on sale. I think they're between $65 to $105.
To $105. Yeah.
$105 is obviously your premium tickets, but for 12 hours,
Yeah.
that's pretty cheap.
I'd say so. And so anybody in the Melbourne area, you'll definitely want to tune into that. He'll have to be going into Sydney, and
No, he's just doing Melbourne.
he's just doing Melbourne
He's
this
just
time.
doing Melbourne, so I dare say there'll be plenty of people around Australia.
Well, there'll be people flying in.
Oh, sorry, I
I
take that back. He's live in Perth and Sydney,
There you go.
Brisbane, Auckland.
Auckland.
He's going to Auckland as well.
Nice. So, guys, Australia, in my opinion, that's somebody you'd want to see. A lot of information that's going to be given out, and a lot of research being done on this area. So, that's the kind of people we want down here. That's the kind of people we want to see.
David Icke, for a long time, was called nuts.
Yeah,
For a
absolutely.
long time. Mm-hmm. Then what happened was a lot of people in the scientific community began to start listening. And then a lot of people that are well respected around the world started supporting him. And now he's no longer considered by the majority as wearing that stigma that he used to have.
Yeah.
He's now people are starting to turn to David Icke and asking him and believing in what he's saying and the message he's delivering. David Icke woke me up many years ago.
I remember. When did I heard him? I believe it was on Art Bell, late '80s. Yeah, I was fascinated back then. So look, if you guys can get to see him in Australia, it would be a treat. It's worth your while to get out there and to get a ticket and go see him. You will not be disappointed by the information received. That's a fact. But I think that's about all the time we have for this week. That's all we can do this week, really. We have time for no more. So, guys, thanks for listening to Beyond 3D this week. We will return next week with another edition for you. And coming up, I think the next few editions you're going to really enjoy.
Fingers crossed we are going to try and get Robert Sullivan IV to come back.
Yeah,
and
that'd
have
be great.
another chat, because his new book,
Cinema Symbolism
2, is
yes.
about to hit the press.
Excellent.
So fingers crossed we can get him in the next week or two.
That'd be great.
Because we did have him on last year for two shows.
And that was just, I love the information that he gives out.
It was very, very cool.
So new movies, he's done a lot of research. It's well worth it. So take care, guys. We will catch you next week with another edition of Beyond 3D.
Good night, everybody. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.